Episode 211, Phineas and Ferb Musical Cliptastic Countdown. Monogram and Doofenshmirtz host a viewer's choice countdown of Season 1's songs. Doofenshmirtz unleashes his musical video mind control innator. I'm not going to critique the actual song list because that's incredibly subjective, so I'm just going to talk about the story surrounding the episode. I actually think this was really clever. They could have easily just made it a generic countdown or done it as a sort of Disney promotion or tie-in, but no, they decided to make an entire episode around it, and for what it's worth, it's really good. I liked how Doof commented that he's only doing this for community service, and then when Monogram points out that it's only 30 minutes long, he says, I have to do this 400 times? I like Doof's actual evil plan too, and his song, My Name is Doof, is one of the funniest songs the show has ever had. I'm not kidding. Hell, I even love how they wove the #1 song on the list into the actual plot. Of course, that makes me wonder how they knew Gidgy Gidgy Goo was going to be #1, and if it wasn't going to be #1, would they have a backup plan? This was really enjoyable. Even if it didn't have the countdown tie-in, it still would have been an enjoyable episode, but I think it makes it even better, and I especially love Doofenshmirtz's quote over there. So this episode gets 4 stars. Sadly, they couldn't recapture the magic when they tried again in Season 4, but that's for later down the road. Episode 212, Phineas and Ferb's Quantum Boogaloo. A mishap after traveling to the future results in Candace succeeding in busting Phineas and Ferb, and Perry failing to defeat Doofenshmirtz, thus creating a dystopian future. Okay, this was a lot of fun to rewatch. I remember being super excited for this when it first premiered, and I thought back then it was so incredible. Watching it again all these years later for this video, it still holds up pretty well. Not quite to the lofty heights I once held it to, but still pretty good. I enjoy what they did with this one more so than It's About Time, because this time there was 22 minutes to work with, and they gave us a dystopian future. You can never go wrong with a dystopian future. So apparently if Phineas and Ferb get busted, Perry will fail to stop Doofenshmirtz, and the entire tri-state area will plunge into chaos. Thanks, Candace! But in all seriousness, I enjoyed this because I always loved seeing how this played out. It was also nice to see that in the future, the good future at least, Candace gave up on busting her brothers and settled down to have a nice life. Presumably with Jeremy. I mean, she has 2 kids named Xavier and Amanda. Who else would it be? Beyond that, the future Doof creates once he reaches power is so dark and desolate that I wanted to see even more of it. I guess my biggest complaint, though admittedly it's probably a nitpick, is that Phineas and Ferb themselves don't have much involvement with the story. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I really would have liked to see them get tangled up more closely to the action. But again, that's a nitpick. Overall, this was a great episode. They didn't tell that many jokes, but the ones they did tell were pretty good. I loved how the show went out of its way to make a complicated backstory for what ultimately amounted to a throwaway gag. I also liked how at the end they allowed Candace to technically succeed in busting the boys when she tattles to her future mother. It's a hollow victory, but it's still nice. Overall, this one gets 5 stars. It's just really enjoyable in how dark and dreary it becomes, but also with the few jokes they do tell that hit bullseye. And I love the end where Candace's future daughter calls Isabella Aunt Isabella, and she immediately assumes she's going to marry Phineas, before Candace points out that it could also be Ferb. Now that would have been a hilarious twist to act your age, and the look on her face makes me laugh 1,000 different ways. Oh, they sure love to tease the shippers. 213A, Hide and Seek. On a rainy day, Phineas and Ferb shrink themselves and their friends to play a game of indoor hide-and-seek. Doofenshmirtz plots to discover Perry's home address. So this is the introduction of Irving, Phineas and Ferb's self-proclaimed #1 fan, and he would stick around for the remainder of the series. I actually liked him for a time more than I liked Candace. Those were weird times. Anyway, the episode itself is pretty fun. It's a very simple premise, but I found myself being very much engrossed in the game. I do like when the show occasionally goes more simple and does a plot like this. And honestly, I found myself warming up to Irving really quickly. There's a quirky charm to him that's really endearing. He's not a perfect character, mind you. I did find him annoying at times throughout the series, but he was a nice replacement to Django. It's just a shame that they couldn't include Django more into the series. I liked how Giant Pinky scared the crap out of Shrunken Candace. I thought that was great. The Doof plot is similarly simple, and admittedly more stupid, but still pretty funny. This is one of those petty evil things that he occasionally does. Okay, he wants to find out Perry's address so he can ring his doorbell and run away. Like, what? Like, how old are you? And I like at the end how Doof feels like he's won because he self-destructed his thing, and then just sits there and contemplates what he's doing with his life. I swear I was laughing so hard. So I give this one 4 stars. Simple plots admittedly hurt the episode, but very minutely. It was very enjoyable, and I do come back to this one more often than not for the laughs. Episode 213B, That Sinking Feeling. Baljeet enlists Phineas and Ferb's help to impress a childhood friend. Doofenshmirtz plots to move the Danville Lighthouse to the other side of town. I like this one, though admittedly I don't think it's one of the strongest episodes. I like it more for its sincerity than its actual content. Okay, Baljeet wants to impress a childhood friend of his, Mishti, when she comes to visit. He wants to be a full-on romantic because apparently he's developed feelings for her. So Phineas and Ferb build a giant boat that they set sail on the water. Of course, none of the romantic gestures Baljeet attempts work out because, shock of all shocks, Mishti likes Baljeet for him and just wants to hang out with him. Makes me wonder if Isabella ever should have taken a hint. I'm sorry, I can't even finish that sentence with a straight face. She would never take a hint from that. In all seriousness, this plot was really sweet, and I loved the ending resolution with Mishti and Baljeet just staring out into the sun with each other. Of course, there were funny parts. I liked how throughout the story, Isabella constantly thought Phineas was the one who threw her a romantic party, only to be disappointed when it's not. But he still enjoys her company. You can see the honesty shine right through, especially near the end when he says, "We should do this again." Poor boy. But, you know, I can see where Isabella would be frustrated, but really, she should have taken a hint from this. The Doofenshmirtz plot, however, is... honestly, it's stupid as fuck. I barely laughed throughout the story. So Doof wants to move the lighthouse that's drawing all the boats in the tri-state area to the other side of town so he can get some sleep. I feel like I should have enjoyed this more than I did, but barely any of the jokes made me laugh, and the plot was basically a non-factor. The only thing that was remotely funny is the end bit, where, after Doof is punched and knocked back into a scale model of the tri-state area he worked on, causing it to break, he angrily sends Perry home and telling him that he lost this one. At that moment, along with Perry's reaction to the whole thing, was pretty damn good. It's just a shame that the rest of the plot couldn't be that good. Overall, I feel comfortable giving this episode 3 stars. The Phineas and Ferb plot really does bring it home, but man, the Doof plot is a slog here. Episode 214A, The Baljitos. Phineas and Ferb help Baljeet at a summer rock camp. Doofenshmirtz attempts to create a baby army. Candace sets Stacy up with a boy. Okay, this is a very forgettable episode for me, honestly. Aside from the song, which, to be fair, I think is one of the best of season 2, there's just not much here for me. The Phineas and Ferb plot doesn't even make sense, even within the show's internal logic. Like, why would Baljeet be in a rock summer camp anyway? I could understand it more if it was something like his mother wanted him to expand his interests outside of academics, or his mother thought he was spending too much time studying so she wanted him to go out and have some fun. Or something like that. But as far as I can see, he's in a rock summer camp because the plot demands it. Not to mention his attitude towards the entire thing is really off-putting to me. Especially the last scene where Phineas says he'd give him an A+ in his book, and Baljeet says, "No, that means absolutely nothing. I get it was meant to be a joke, but it wasn't funny." Also, the Candace-Stacy plot. Ooh, that was a tough one. It felt like the episode couldn't decide whether to focus more on Stacy's crush on Coltrane or Candace's self-deluded dilemma with Jeremy. And in the end, neither really gets as much focus as I thought it should have gotten. Hell, Stacy doesn't really have a plot when you think about it. Sure, she talks about wanting to talk to Coltrane, but we don't see it happen. Show, don't tell. So at the end, when they're just randomly holding hands, it really comes out of nowhere. I really believe had the episode cut out Candace's bit entirely, or at least toned back her involvement, and focused more on Stacy exclusively, it could have been a lot more enjoyable. And the Doof plot isn't all that special. He wants to make a baby army with a device he's made that's connected to his heartbeat. The logic is so stupid, but admittedly I thought it was kind of funny. But a very shallow kind of funny. This one gets 2 stars. 214B, The Necessary Roughness. While at a store, Vanessa attempts to prove to her father she's responsible enough to have her own car. To do so, she's tasked with obtaining a capsule containing a rare chemical. Ferb, Candace, Stacy, Baljeet, Buford, and Perry all get tangled up in her pursuit. Notice any glaring omissions in that summary? Yeah, and that's not a mistake either. Phineas literally has 0 impact on this episode's plot whatsoever. And to be honest, I found it quite hilarious. Who knew Phineas's kryptonite was a massage chair? That's just wonderful. Honestly, I'm shocked that this idea wasn't brought back in some way after this episode. To be honest, his absence isn't even that noticeable because the story itself is pretty good. Now, unlike most episodes where there are 2 distinctly different plots and they just connect with how the Perry plot makes the Phineas and Ferb big idea disappear, this one has one specific plot with every character involved in it in some way or another. They all want this rare capsule for one reason or another, and it's a mad chase to get it. Vanessa wants it so she can prove to Doofenshmirtz she's responsible enough for her own car because she's sick and tired of driving around with him on his scooter. Also, apparently he installed this Waynator onto his helmet. Baljeet wants it for his science project, because of course he does, and Buford's just there as the angry wall of meat, because of course he is. Candace and Stacy want it because Candace thinks it looks like a lantern that she could give to Jeremy for their anniversary. The anniversary of the first time they went to Slushy Dog together and he spilled the cheese dog with mustard on her. What? Perry's tasked with retrieving it specifically to keep it away from Doofenshmirtz, and Ferb's only there to assist Vanessa because young love. Pretty simple, and yet it all works just so well. So many of the jokes hit bullseye. I really enjoyed this one. You know, for as much as I loved how they developed the relationship between Isabella and Phineas, until the end at least, I do wish they had done more with Ferb and Vanessa. Granted, I understand partially why they didn't, that's for season 3, but it would have been nice. But that's a small thing. Honestly, if I had to nitpick one thing, it would be Phineas's absence. Now, I said earlier that it's not too noticeable, and I stand by that. And while it's nice that Ferb got to shine on his own without him for a change, it is weird at first to not have him be an integral part of the episode at all. And it's not something like Sidetracked or Primal Perry, where the focus is exclusively on one character and Phineas and Ferb don't really have an impact. No, even without Phineas though, it's still really enjoyable. I love the part at the end where Doofenshmirtz is accused of stealing the capsule and is hauled off to where I assume he's going to jail. And the part at the very end where Phineas finally rejoins Ferb and he's just seen shaking from sitting in the massage chair too long. That had me laughing out loud. If ever there was an appropriate time for a cameo from Isabella, that would have been it. Oh well, this one gets 5 stars. It really is super enjoyable. I didn't even talk about the song. While it's not one of my personal favorites, it's pretty good composition. And I love what they do with Vanessa and Heinz Doofenshmirtz, especially in the later season. Frickin' hell. Episode 215A, No More Bunny Business. Candace finds a stray rabbit and decides to take care of it. Phineas and Ferb build a pair of X-ray glasses. Perry is assigned to stop a rogue Alka agent from infiltrating his lair. Doofenshmirtz creates his own nemesis to fill the Perry-less void. Okay, how pathetic is it that I found the best part of this episode to be Doofenshmirtz being defeated by a potted plant? Yeah, I didn't like this one very much. It's not bad, not really close, but no, it doesn't grip me at all. First of all, for 11 minutes, there is way too much going on here, and I'm shocked I'm actually saying that for a show that balances 2 different plots very well. But here, no, there's just too much. Phineas and Ferb make X-ray glasses because they feel ripped off from a pair they ordered in a magazine. Candace finds a stray rabbit, takes him and dollies him up and such. Perry has to stop said bunny, who is a rogue Alka agent, from infiltrating the lair, and Doof tries to fill the void of not having Perry there, so he literally creates Planty the potted plant out of his own twisted imagination. Seriously, what the fuck is this episode? Now, to be fair, that's worth a good laugh, especially at the end, when Monogram and Carl literally make Planty an Alka agent, but that's about it. I didn't find the Phineas and Ferb plot to be all that interesting or funny. First off, the idea that Phineas and Ferb would think that a pair of glasses that they ordered from a magazine would actually have the ability to let you see through stuff is just stupid beyond all belief. Yeah, I know they're kids, and with other characters, it might be believable, but this doesn't sit right with me. Not with Phineas and Ferb. I could have seen it working if they had watched like a movie that had X-ray glasses, and then they decided to make their own, but then we wouldn't have that scene where Candace yells at her brothers to move the package from the stoop where she finds the rabbit. Then she proceeds to baby talk him for the majority of the episode, while also yelling at her brothers later when they ask for carrots. Yeah, she screams at them for asking for carrots. I'm not even fucking around here, but I'll come back to that. I'm not even that invested in Perry's story, mainly because I don't find the rabbit, named Dennis, that interesting. So the ensuing fight they have isn't even that memorable. He's defeated when Perry manages to drop a bunch of carrots into the lair, and he eats them all and gets really fat and immobile. That's it. Now, I'm glad he got brought back in the season 4 episode, The Return of the Rogue Rabbit, because that was a much better episode featuring this character. But here, no. It just doesn't do anything for me. The only plot remotely funny is the Doof plot, and that's only in the sense of how pathetic Doof really is, creating a nemesis out of a plant just to feel complete. This one gets 2 stars. There's also one huge problem I took away from, well, a lot of season 2 episodes, but specifically this one, and that problem is Candace. I'll talk more about this as we go along, but I found Candace to be really painfully obnoxious in season 2. I don't know exactly what it was, whether it was the animation, the writing, the voice acting, or some combination of the 3, but for a handful of these episodes, I really couldn't stomach Candace, specifically with how she talked to her brothers. It's incredibly off-putting for me, and I'm thankful that they fixed it for seasons 3 and 4. But season 2, some of her appearances are just very uncomfortable to sit through. 215B, Spa Day. Candace and Stacy's plans for a spa day get sidetracked. Phineas and Ferb build their own spa. Doofenshmirtz takes in a stray kitten that causes him nothing but trouble. This is another one where I really liked the sentimentality behind the plot more so than the actual plot. And oddly enough, this time it was the Candace plot. So they have a spa day plan, because that's what teenage girls do, I guess. But it gets thrown off the rails when they pass by Jeremy fixing up old houses for the homeless. Candace, of course, wants to impress him, and Stacy couldn't care less. But she convinces her to stay behind and help. It doesn't go well. Now, there's a scene near the end where Candace is apologizing over and over, but Stacy stops her and says, "You did it for love, so it's okay." Because that excuses 100% of everything. I could have a problem with this. I mean, I've been critical of the show in the past when it throws aside a chance to teach a good moral, but it's not that bad here. I don't feel like they're entirely just throwing it away. I feel like they're just going with the flow in a sense. It is a genuinely nice moment, and it's even more rewarding when they get back to the house later and Phineas and Ferb give them their spa day anyway. Unfortunately, the other side is that the other two plots weren't that interesting. I mean, we don't actually see much of Phineas and Ferb actually building the spa. It's just there when Candace and Stacy enter, and the Doof plot honestly doesn't deliver. So Doof brings in a stray kitten, but it starts causing trouble with his possessions, and when one of his donators, the Gloominator, is fired into the sky, causing the sky to turn cloudy and gloomy, Perry comes in, and Doof tries to convince him that it was the cat who did it, but Perry initially doesn't believe him. You want to know what's most insulting about this? This is a blatant ripoff of the shtick they already do with Candace. The only difference is that at the end, Perry actually does see the light, but that's it. Why the flying hell did they think they could get away with doing this for Doof, too? I mean, I could have seen it working if Perry figured out right away that it was the cat and not Doof, but Doof tried to defend the cat and stopped Perry from taking him away or something like that. That could have worked. Hell, I'm surprised they didn't do that. But literally the same shtick as Candace. What, did they think that because they barely do it with Candace in this episode, we'd automatically gravitate to Doof doing it here? Well, I sure as hell didn't. This one is just 2 stars. I really think it was close to being good. If they rewrote the Doof plot, I could have unhesitantly given it 3 stars. Episode 216A. Bubble Boys. Phineas and Ferb create a bubble that they can inhabit inside of. Candace practices driving. Doofenshmirtz plots to combine country and western music to take over the world. This one was good. Not great, not bad, but good. I didn't find myself to be too crazy about the Phineas and Ferb plot because, once again, Baljeet takes center stage here. His problem this time is that he has a crazy tight schedule that he likes to adhere to. And once he gets trapped inside the bubble Phineas and Ferb make, well, that schedule pretty much goes out the window. The rest of the plot is just really him whining and complaining about having to get out and adhere to the schedule, while simultaneously trying to avoid any mishaps inside the bubble. And of course, at the end, after surviving a near-death experience, he loosens up. Almost out of nowhere, really. There's really no transition between him being a stick in the mud and to him relaxing. It just kind of happens. Of course, that said, as indifferent as I am to this plot, there's really nothing bad about it. The Doof plot, however, I really liked this one. I will say that I find it weird that they decide for this episode that Doofenshmirtz has a terrible singing voice. There is a delightful quirk to his voice. Here, though, he flat out says that it's terrible. Doofenshmirtz believes that if he controls the music, he controls the world. I don't know how those points connect, but whatever. So he makes an innator that gives him a beautiful singing voice. And he plans to combine Western and country music in order to use it to convince his followers to let him take over the world or something. I have no idea. It's absurdly simple, but honestly, that's what made it funny. And I love at the end how after his ruse is exposed, everyone turns on him and runs away. Then he tries to make a hasty escape using a jetpack, but it backfires and instead just takes his pants away, revealing that he wears boxers with Perry's face on them. Okay. Not gonna lie, that one was the best joke in the entire episode. Honestly, I give this one 3 stars. I really don't care much for the Phineas and Ferb plot. Hell, I didn't even mention the Candace plot. So Linda takes her out to practice driving so she can get closer to getting her license. What do you expect? It doesn't go well, and unlike It's a Mud world, where Candace is able to bond with Lawrence and put aside her urge to bust the boys, there's tension throughout this story, and she even puts her mother in grave danger just to bust the boys. She literally drives off a raised drawbridge to get in the air so she can show her mother the boys inside the bubble. What the actual fuck? Yeah, I really didn't like this one. It was very uncomfortable for me to watch. I hated every second of it, and I'm glad we never really have a plot like this again. 216B, Isabella and the Temple of Sap. During the events of Bubble Boys, Isabella and her Fireside Girl troop head out to procure Maracanut tree sap. Isabella's pet dog, Pinky, attempts to stop his nemesis, Professor Esmeralda Puffinplots, from stealing hairspray. So this one's a major reversal of the previous one. By that I mean, I absolutely loved the Phineas and Ferb, actually I guess I mean the Isabella plot, but not really crazy about the Puffinplots plot. But yeah, I loved it. This was another episode that takes place in the same time frame as its sister episode, but focuses on a different character's perspective. This time, it's Isabella and her troop. I seriously wish we had gotten more of these types of episodes, specifically ones that center around the troop. Sure, there's more episodes that do focus on them significantly, but not to this degree. And the only other episode that would specifically follow this format with the troop would be the season 4 episodes, B-Day, B-Story. For this episode, the Isabella plot is great. I love the charisma that she and the girls can bring to the table. This episode made me want to learn more about these characters, and to an extent, we really kind of don't, which is disappointing. But for what this specific episode gave us, I really liked it. I thought it was adorable how Isabella has her own Phineas-centric imagination land, where apparently Phineas is a centaur. No, you know what? I don't care. Moving on. And apparently Ginger has a thing for Baljeet, and apparently everyone thinks that's stupid. That was hilarious. Oh, and I love the old abandoned amusement park gag. That's really good. The episode really is just a day in the life of this troupe, but for what it is, I really enjoyed it. You know, way back in the day, there was a rumor, like many years ago, that a potential spin-off featuring the girls prominently was in the works. It's a shame that it never materialized, because after watching this, I could have totally gotten on board. I mean, that theme song, assuming it would have been the theme song to that show, is adorable. Unfortunately, the Puffinplots plot wasn't as good. Not that I have issues specifically focusing on Pinky instead of Perry. I mean, on a narrative level, that obviously makes sense, but I wasn't crazy about Puffinplots herself. Mainly that she wasn't that interesting or that funny. Her shtick basically is she's obsessed with beauty and beauty products, and our plan in this episode is to use her transportation, her me-mobile, okay, that was funny, to travel to the old abandoned amusement park. Seriously, say that 5 times fast. To retrieve the last sets of Stiff Beauty hairspray, a beauty product that's been discontinued. Because apparently her philosophy is she can only do evil when she looks her best. Yeah, I didn't really care that much for this plot. Once again, it's a shame they didn't do more of these kinds of episodes because I would have liked to see Pinky's stories develop as well as Puffinplots. I think she has potential, but this one really didn't sell me. On the whole, though, the Isabella plot is so good that it really makes up for the shortcomings of the Pinky plot. So I give this episode 5 stars. Episode 217A. Cheer up Candace. Candace becomes depressed after Jeremy cancels their date. Phineas and Ferb try to cheer her up. Perry must clear his name after being accused of committing heinous crime. So going into this review, I really didn't expect to get as much enjoyment out of this episode as I did. I'm not the biggest fan of Candace-centric episodes, especially her busting episodes. But this was really nice. I loved seeing the boys go out of their way to try to get her out of her funk. Of course, the reason she's in it is because she's so overdramatic, so it is entirely her fault, but still, it's the thought that counts. There weren't too many jokes that I thought were laugh out loud funny. I did really like Baljeet's bits. I'm a sucker for good ventriloquism, but enough of them worked well. The Doof plot was pretty funny too. So apparently Doofenshmirtz got the idea to create doppelgangers of Perry to ruin his good name. And apparently he got the idea while he was on fire. Okay, the only question, and yeah, I can't believe this is the question I'm asking, was the fire self-inflicted? Anyway, of course it fails when Doof orders the doppelgangers to attack Perry, and he beats them all, thus clearing his name. It's so simple, but I really liked it for the funny gags it threw. And the sheer what the hell factor with the whole on fire thing. So you have a really funny Doof plot, a really sweet endearing Candace plot, and of course the Phineas and Ferb stuff is just standard. So 4 stars. I really don't have much more to say about this one. Episode 217B, Fireside Girl Jamboree. To earn tickets to a concert, Candace joins the Fireside Girls. Doofenshmirtz plans to turn the bridge between the mainland and the Fireside Girls cupcake factory into broccoli. This one's just good. Okay, I like the idea for the Phineas and Ferb / Candace plot. I actually think it's rather hilarious that Candace feverishly joined the Fireside Girls and had to earn 50 patches in a single day to become official and receive her tickets. Only to find out at the end, and this is hilarious, that the girls were all allowed to bring guests. Her expression at the end was literally priceless. I'm sure she was having her light flash right before her eyes. I also found it funny how Phineas and Ferb apparently had to spend an entire night cleaning up their project because Deus Ex Machina apparently decided to give them a finger this time. Phineas and Ferb sleep deprived. These ideas just write themselves. And of course the window portrait gag, that was the best joke in the entire episode. The roller coaster cupcake delivery system, you know what? That was a really nice visual bit. That was really nice. And the song is really good. It's basically Go Phineas from the Fast and the Phineas, but here the singing is much better. The doof plot, however, is not that great. Probably the best thing I remember from it is the transportation system Monogram uses on Perry to try teleporting him right into Doofenshmirtz's lair. Especially since at the end, he just ends up teleported into the trap that Doof set anyway. But that's about it. Apparently Doof wants to turn the bridge into broccoli because he's on a diet, and the Fireside girls constantly knock on his door to sell them cupcakes, and he buys said cupcakes because he's an idiot. See, this is stupid, but it's not enjoyably stupid. It's not over-the-top stupid. Especially since we'd have arguably a better health-related plot in a later episode. Arguably. There's nothing wrong with this one, it's just not gelling for me all the way. So, 3 stars. Episode 218A, The Bully Code. Buford indebts himself to Baljeet after he saves his life. Candace attempts to retrieve Jeremy's phone after she sends him an embarrassing photo of herself. Doofenshmirtz plots to do evil while in a cast. Okay, I'm not too crazy about this one, but it was decent enough. My favorite plot is surprisingly the Baljeet plot. Seeing Buford follow him all around, doing stuff for him, and screwing it all up. That was funny. It's not like Buford's technically in the wrong, but I can understand Baljeet's perspective and him being sick of it. I'm actually surprised that this episode doesn't go the route where the guy takes advantage of the debt and Baljeet was a total dick to him. They don't do that here. Then again, the show doesn't like to handle jerk characters, so it's understandable, I guess. So after Baljeet saves Buford's life and Buford becomes his slave, Baljeet gets sick of it and enlists Phineas and Ferb to help Buford save his life, so they're even. Boom, done. Pretty basic. The Candace plot at least has a bit more depth, but only a little bit. She wants to delete embarrassing photos of herself off Jeremy's phone, and succeeds in the end. But then accidentally takes one more photo of herself with his phone, but it ends up looking really nice. The ending is really sweet. That's about all I can give it. The Doof plot, it's weakest in plot, but it's the funniest plot of them all. He plots revenge against an ice cream truck that ran over his foot and broke it. Because, of course he does, he's Doofenshmirtz. And as a result, Perry defeats him and ends up hurting his other foot too. And that vicious cycle bit at the end with Doofenshmirtz, that was the best joke. This one is another one that gets 3 stars. But keep in mind, 3 stars is still good. 218B. Finding Mary McGuffin. Phineas and Ferb become detectives to find Candace's favorite doll after it is sold at a garage sale. Doofenshmirtz struggles to finish building his latest innator. Okay, here's the episode in a nutshell. Phineas and Ferb offer their assistance to an ungrateful Candace in finding a doll that she doesn't really play with anymore, which happens to be the same doll Vanessa has wanted since she was a child, which Doofenshmirtz bought for her at the Flynn-Fletcher garage sale. Doofenshmirtz buys a bunch of on-off switches to finish his innator, only to find out that it only works on a lobster cage? Okay, admittedly, that was kind of funny, as was Doof pointing out to Perry that he can't technically defeat him because it's not evil, but that was really stupid. And at the end, Vanessa ultimately claims the toy when she takes it from a little girl. And I have to admit that was also kind of funny, especially hearing Doof praise Vanessa for being a dick to that child at the end of the episode. But that's really it. I will say, I think the jokes that were funny enough for me to feel comfortable in giving this episode 3 stars. This isn't a go-to episode for me, for one reason. Candace. Yes, once again, she has her bitch hat on. She is like super obnoxious in this episode. First, her inflections in this episode grate on me really quickly. There's that joke in the beginning where one character says character B has a nice angelic voice, but then character B comes in screaming like a banshee. Yeah, nice start, people. Then she has like 0 patience for the ambience Phineas and Ferb create with the noir style they're trying to emulate. Firstly, you're the one that demanded they drop what they were going to do to help you find your doll. If Phineas's narrations really bother you, then that's too bad. They're the ones helping you. I think you could tolerate his narrations for a little bit, especially since they do succeed in finding your doll in the end. But no, you feel the need to be a killjoy. Seriously, what the hell crawled up your ass and made you act like an uptight little... Sorry. I got a little carried away there. But really, Candace, you're just lucky Phineas is too nice to give it back to you. I swear to God, I am so glad that they fixed this problem with her in Season 3, because her performance alone single-handedly drags down a lot of episodes for me, especially in Season 2. And the worst is yet to come, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Episode 219A, What Do It Do? When Doofenshmirtz's latest invention lands in the front yard of the Flynn-Fletcher household, Phineas and Ferb reverse engineer it to figure out what it does. I don't really like this one very much. And to be honest, it has very little to do with the actual plot itself. No, it's a very personal thing, so let me get the rating out of the way first. 3 stars. See, the plots for both the Phineas and Ferb and the Doof story, they're not that bad. Let's start with the Phineas and Ferb story. They, in lieu of building a brand new big idea, reverse engineer something already built to figure out how it works. Now that's actually a really neat idea, and it plays out very well in this episode. As for the Doof plot, well, I'll be honest, it doesn't really feel like a plot. It feels more like they're just derping around. So early on, Perry is already battling Doofenshmirtz on his hoverjet. When they knock over the machine that lands in the front yard, he and Perry get trapped in many of Doof's preset traps. And the rest of the plot is spent with both of them trying to get out of said traps. Until at the end where Perry finally escapes for good. It's not that engaging. I'll give it this, I found much of Doofenshmirtz's banter to be pretty amusing, and the part where they pass over Paris and he trolls everyone by yelling, "Pierre!" That was pretty hilarious. But that's kind of it. It's funny, but it just meanders and drags until the end. And of course, let's get to my biggest problem with the episode. So in this episode, Candace and Linda sorta switch roles. Linda goes hysterical trying to contact Lawrence, who left the episode early on, to make him come home and see the giant machine. Candace tries to make Linda understand that this is how she feels every time she tries to bust the boys and fails. But Linda never once gets the message. Not even once. I have to say, it was super infuriating to watch it play out like this. Not to mention the voice acting made Linda just seem like a complete moron to me. I'm sorry, this wasn't very pleasant to watch at all. Honestly, now that I'm rewatching these episodes for these reviews, I'm realizing just how much I'm disliking Linda's character and sympathizing with Candace. At least, most of the time. Like, Linda's probably the closest thing the show comes to having a legitimate idiot. And yeah, worse than Doof. I'm not even kidding. 219B. Atlantis. Phineas, Ferb, and their friends search for the lost city of Atlantis. Candace enters her and Linda in a sandcastle building contest. Doofenshmirtz makes an army of plants. While I may not be super crazy in love with this episode, I will say, this is the SpongeBob episode Atlantis SquarePantis done right. First of all, that was a 44-minute slog. This one's only 11 minutes long. Actually, no, I take that back. See that fun fact? Yeah, this episode actually clocks in at just over 9 minutes. Its sister episode, What Do It Do, clocks in at just over 12 minutes. But in any case, this is what Atlantis SquarePantis should have been. A nice, short story about a brief visit to the lost city. And yeah, while it's kind of a bummer that we didn't really see into this version of Atlantis, I'd much prefer this to what SpongeBob did. It was simple enough, there were funny jokes in it, and it had an overall nice feel to it. The Candace plot was actually nice too. I don't know why, but I find the idea of Candace forcing Linda against her will into the sandcastle building contest is hilarious. My personal headcanon is that it's cathartic revenge against her for What Do It Do. If this show's continuity was anything like Avatar or BoJack Horseman, it would have worked out that way. I don't find this plot to be overwhelmingly great or funny, but it's certainly got a charm to it, and I love the end where Jeremy goes ballistic after seeing Atlantis, and they just assume that he's talking about their pathetic-looking sandcastle. The Doof plot, unfortunately, has nothing really special. I expected the story to bring me a lot of laughs, but it wasn't even that funny. His plan is to make an evil plant army, and it backfires when the plants go rogue and attack both him and Perry. Perry saves them both, and Doof gets an allergic reaction to them. The end. Now that part was kind of funny, but that's about it. I'll give this one 3 stars. With this, the Phineas and Ferb plot and the Candace plot were much more enjoyable than I initially remembered them to be. Episode 220A. Picture this. Phineas and Ferb create a transporter that can retrieve any object. Candace plots to use it to bust Phineas and Ferb. Doofenshmirtz plots to rid the world of mimes. I don't have that much to say for this one. It's really good. I liked the part at the beginning where Phineas comes up with the idea to build the transporter to retrieve Ferb's skateboard from England. Lawrence asks them why they just don't build a skateboard, and then there's an awkward silence, and it was pretty great. The entire premise is really enjoyable because it's another plot where Phineas and Ferb use their big idea to actually help their friends. In this case, help them find lost stuff. Except in Baljeet's case, he just wanted to be a troll and pull his uncle from his vacation. Or at least that's my headcanon. I really liked the Doof plot too, just the idea that he hates mimes. And that robot guy joke will never not be funny, and thinks he can get rid of them by trapping them in invisible boxes. I don't even remember how hard I laughed when I first watched it. And that Perry uses the boys' transporter to destroy Doof's innator, that's really clever. The only plot I didn't care that much for was Candace's. But admittedly, the last scene, the "there is no candy in me" rap slash song slash whatever, made up for a lot of it. That is a guaranteed gut buster. I feel comfortable giving this one 4 stars. I think it's earned it. 220B, Nerdy Dancing. When Candace signs her and Jeremy up for a hit dance show, Jeremy seeks out Phineas and Ferb's help to improve his dancing skills. Doofenshmirtz and his League of Evil Scientists seek to get their message out at the dance show. Of all the episodes I remembered from Season 2, this was one that I didn't expect to love as much as I did. But you know what? This one's really great. First off, it's a Candace-centric episode. Technically Jeremy, but semantics. That doesn't focus on her trying to bust her brothers. I firmly stand by my belief that the episodes that feature Candace, that don't focus exclusively on her busting her brothers, are the best Candace episodes of the show. Here, it's no difference. She signs herself and Jeremy up to compete in a hit dance show, but Jeremy doesn't have much confidence in his dancing skills, so he goes to Phineas and Ferb to help. They provide him with an exoskeleton that captures Ferb's movements and allows Jeremy to imitate them. In layman's terms, they help him cheat, which actually is kind of hilarious to me because Phineas and Ferb are the last people I would expect to cheat. But even after the lie is revealed at the end, Candace isn't upset in the least. Hell, nobody is, as both the audience and the judges have their attention focused on Ferb instead. So the story isn't perfect, but its heart is in the right place, and I really enjoyed every bit of it. What carries this one is the characters. A weaker show may have followed the lie revealed story all the way through, and it could have made this really uncomfortable. In that sense, I'm glad this episode doesn't do that. At least not all the way, because there's a really sweet moment at the end where Candace carries Jeremy out over her shoulder. It's really heartwarming. And the doof plot is absolutely fantastic. So many jokes hit bullseye. My favorites are the jokes involving the potato salad Norm cooked up, and the one where Doofenshmirtz reveals what his group of evil scientists is called. Love Muffin. That entire scene was awesome. Plus, there's a lot of great gags on the actual dance floor involving not just the regular dancers, but the scientists too. I love how each time a scientist gets in front of a camera, their spotlight goes out like right away. Every single time it happened, especially with Doof, multiple times. I love this episode. One of the best in season 2 in my personal opinion. 5 stars. Episode 221A. I Was a Middle-Aged Robot. A mishap involving Lawrence results in Perry substituting in for him at the father-daughter picnic. Doofenshmirtz invents Yulg, a solution that works the opposite of glue. This is another one where I like the sentimental value of the episode more than the actual plot. Though to be fair, I did enjoy the actual plot, for the most part. So, Candace wants to win the father-daughter picnic with Lawrence because they lose every year. Unfortunately, Lawrence accidentally discovers Perry's lair, so Monogram and Carl are forced to erase his memory. But they go too far and regress him to a toddler. So while they're fixing their screw-up, they entrust Perry with a Lawrence robot. By the way, the scene where Carl reveals that he has a robot for each member of the family is so freaking hilarious. Monogram's reaction and Carl's confidence absolutely broke me. Just stand in with Candace until Lawrence is ready. Of course, it doesn't go too well, at least in the try to win the picnic department. He's able to stay undercover until Lawrence is ready, where they win the sack race and first prize. And they have a genuinely nice moment together. Like I said, I like Candace plots better when they don't focus on her busting her brothers. It's much easier for me to root for her. Heck, I didn't even notice Phineas and Ferb's minimal involvement all that much. Their shtick is that they cheer Candace in various ways. It's short and it's fine. The Doof plot honestly is probably the least of the 3, but even I admit it's hilarious. Remember in my No More Bunny Business review, I didn't take too kindly to the Doof plot because it was just him trying to make himself feel complete since there was no Perry to fight. Well, in this episode, Perry straight up abandons Doof to fulfill his duties as Robot Lawrence. And Doof goes on with his evil plan anyway. Yeah, it doesn't matter to him in this episode that Perry is gone. He's doing it anyway. And you know what? I love that. It's a welcome departure from what we got in No More Bunny Business. Of course, granted, the plot itself isn't great. Okay, he creates Yulg, an opposite solution to glue that tears apart structures rather than binds them together. And of course, after the scene where Perry abandons Doof, we only see him once more, near the end where he flies over the adult diaper factory. I don't know either. And accidentally spills his Yulg on his plane, thus tearing it apart and thus foiling his plan. It's rather forgettable, but I will admit the part where Doof reacts to Perry leaving him, that was really good. Overall, I give this 4 stars. I think maybe if we had seen a little bit more of Doof's plot, I might have been able to give this one 5. It's funny, but there's barely anything there. Still, that's a relatively minor complaint. 221B, Suddenly Susie. Candace inadvertently agrees to babysit Susie Johnson, and the two surprisingly bond. Susie assists Candace in busting Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb build a Niagara Falls replica. Doofenshmirtz plots to increase his carbon footprint. So I wasn't hugely thrilled that they brought back Susie for this episode. I don't care that much for her. But I'm surprised at how they brought her back. And I'm kind of split on it. I don't really love it, but I guess it's a neat twist that she's only sadistic when it involves Jeremy. But the problem is this is the only episode of the series where that concept is utilized. So in a weird way, it feels sort of wasted. Beyond that, I don't like plots that focus on Candace busting the boys that much anyway, so that's already working against the episode. To its credit, I did think Candace was tolerable in this episode, and to be fair, it was pretty funny when Phineas sort of imitated her shtick when he called Linda, but that's about it. The Phineas and Ferb stuff is pretty standard. The jokes with Isabella and her catchphrase, those are pretty good, I guess. And the doof plot is really stupid. Remember in The Lake Nose Monster, when Doof had a big idea for an evil scheme, but couldn't figure out what big laundry meant? It's sort of the same thing here, but much less funny. He wants to increase his, quote, carbon footprint, but has no idea what a carbon footprint is. Honestly, I'm not sure I do either. But their attempts at poking fun at that here just don't work the way they do in The Lake Nose Monster. So ultimately, this is a lackluster episode with an interesting idea, at least for Candace's plot, but without much substance to support either plot. 2 stars. To be honest, I'm not really sure how you can make this episode better. Oh, now we're talking. Episode 222. Phineas and Ferb Christmas Vacation. Phineas and Ferb turn Danville into a giant thank you card for Santa. Doofenshmirtz uses his Naughtyinator to put Danville on the naughty list. So season 2 might be a long slog to get through because there are so many episodes to review, but one of the benefits of getting to do season 2 is this particular episode. I absolutely, positively, unapologetically love this episode. If for no other reason than just for the endless heart and love they put into this. 6 stars. I love almost every single frame of this special. Almost. So, it's Christmas time in Danville, and Phineas and Ferb get the idea to turn Danville into a giant thank you for Santa, because Phineas feels Santa never gets enough appreciation for all he does. Of course, Candace doesn't believe in Santa Claus, and openly and repeatedly laughs at them and their friends for even mentioning his name. To be fair, I could have dealt without her making fun of them for this, as well as later in the episode when she unfairly calls Phineas out and claims his summer's worth of big ideas is what resulted in him being labeled naughty. But they make up for it with a nice story for her too. Unfortunately, because of Doofenator, the entire town is presumed to be naughty. So after Phineas rallies the town to do a lovely musical number and broadcast it around the world, 2 elves, Blaine and Cluent, go to Danville to investigate. It all leads to Phineas deciding to bring Christmas to Danville himself. So he, with the help of his friends and Candace and the 2 elves, they build a sleigh and start delivering gifts to everyone in Danville. It's a really sweet montage, especially in one moment where Buford is tasked with getting everyone in Danville to put their lights back on so he can be actually taken off the naughty list and so the fog can clear. And then it reveals that all he wanted was to be thought of as nice by his friends. Now that's beautiful. There's another moment where Baljeet gets a present to a girl. It's a really big hat, and he lands in her chimney, and before he leaves, he kisses her. Yeah, I'll come back to this. And at the end, they return home and find that Santa was enjoying the clubhouse Phineas and Ferb had built, revealing that it was pretty much an elaborate plan of his to get Phineas what he wanted for Christmas. Which, if you see that quote over there, is possibly one of the sweetest moments this entire show has ever produced. Now, as far as this part of the special goes, I have 2 complaints. One was Candace's behavior, though as I said, they do somewhat redeem her with her story, and the other is the girl Baljeet kisses. Her name is Wendy Stinglehopper. It's said in the special that she's apparently their classmate. Yeah, when you do a show that's set outside of the school year, and then you do something like this that makes references to school, you kind of risk confusing your viewers. On top of that, it was Baljeet's Christmas wish to get a kiss under the mistletoe. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked that they didn't do this plot for Isabella. I mean, I know she doesn't celebrate Christmas, but she has the hots for Phineas. It just would have made sense on a narrative level. Or hell, why didn't you do it for Candace? At least with her, it would make more sense because she's a teenager. But no, they give this plot to Baljeet for some reason. You know what's really dumb about this? We never see this character again. She's never even referenced again. Once again, this episode supposedly takes place after the summer the series is set in, but that only makes it more confusing as to why they didn't make this Isabella's plot, or even Candace's plot. Baljeet just seems like the wrong character to do this plot. But that's, all in all, a minute complaint. Everything else in this plot makes up for the small flaws that it has. And at the end, when Ferb's grandparents arrive for the holidays, they all go inside and the song Thank You Santa starts playing. I think this is legit one of my favorite holiday songs of all time. It's absolutely beautiful, and every lyric is sung with a heart and charisma that no show can match. And that's just the Phineas and Ferb plot. Next, we have the Candace plot. Admittedly, I think this is the weakest of the 3, but honestly, it was still really good. Aside from her few bad moments that I mentioned earlier, I enjoyed following her dilemma, and ended up glad that she succeeded in the end. The end scene was a gift from Magie illusion. Candace sold her necklace to buy Jeremy a silver guitar, and Jeremy traded his electric guitar for a pair of earrings for Candace. It was a really sweet moment though, and I was happy for them. Like, genuinely happy for them. Funny story, the extended edition of this special, which aired a year after this originally broadcast, for some reason, had an extra song, What Does He Want, that better lays out the foundation for this plot. Of course, my complaint there is, it's only 5 extra minutes of material for the special. Why wouldn't you have just aired this in the first place? Like seriously, when you advertise extended edition, one would think that more than 5 minutes are tacked onto the special. But that's another small complaint. And the last plot is Doof's plot. This was a real funny one. So Doof is pissed because he doesn't hate Christmas. Doofenshmirtz wants to hate Christmas. His song, I Really Don't Hate Christmas, had me laughing so much. It was really good. So he built a Naughtinator. Actually, I take that back. By his own accord, he didn't even build it himself. Apparently, the plans were mailed to him by his Uncle Justin from Borneo. I love that joke, by the way. To turn the literal town of Danville naughty. Not the people. The literal town of Danville. Unfortunately, he can't until he gets a reason to actually hate Christmas. And what ends up pushing him over the edge is a bunch of Christmas carolers who barge into his home and sing Christmas carols to him. And the kicker is that they don't stop until they actually get figgy pudding. You know that line, now bring us some figgy pudding, we won't go until we get some? Well, they literally don't leave until he finds some figgy pudding and gives it to them. That is absolutely hilarious. What's even better is that later on the Naughtinator is broken not by Perry, but by the sound waves of a song Doof plays on his own. The CD A Sal Tuscany Christmas, which Doof cleverly points out later as an anagram, an incorrect one, but I digress, for Santa Claus. But in any case, he's ultimately defeated, says he hates Christmas, and then celebrates the fact that he now hates Christmas. It was beautifully hilarious. Oh, and during the credits, there's a nice scene where Doofenshmirtz gives Perry his Christmas gift. It's a vase. That's a really funny callback to gaming the system. This special was just beautiful. Every single time I watch it, I get such a warm feeling in my heart. The only thing I don't like is that this was the only legitimate Christmas special this show produced. No, I don't count A Phineas and Ferb Family Christmas as a Christmas episode. That one was stupid. But this was near perfect. I make no apologies about the fact that I watched this episode outside of Christmas. In fact, people should watch this outside of Christmas. If you love this show, you've got to watch this episode. Time of the year be damned. Phineas and Ferb Christmas Vacation is a classic. Not just a show classic, but a Christmas classic.